Hello everyone, my name is Aurora Shweta. I manage Project Maverick at LawSeco, which is an initiative to make great quality legal content freely available online for CLAT preparations. Through these webinars, every day we try to bring people who have been through the same struggle of preparation and have learned from it and would like to share with you all. We have Vyom with us today. Interestingly, he is IELTS rank 12, SLAT score 131. I stand corrected by 131.
132.
Yeah, you said 130. So he was offended by that one mark. So CLAT ranked 248 in 2019. We thought he would be perfect to talk about our topic we cover today. While we assume we have 2 more months to go, how best to use this time, 2 months, most effectively is what we're going to talk about today with Vyom. We also have Mr. Harshvardhan Tiwari, who has some great insights to add as a faculty of CLAT who has mentored almost 2,500 students in last 4 or 5 years. Over to you, Vyom. Please take us through the CLAT prep days, please.
Hi, I'm Vyom Tiwari. I'm from Varanasi, Uttar Pradesh, and I currently study in NLU Delhi. I was ALET AIR 12, and therefore, following which, I decided that I'd go to NLU Delhi. Obviously, I mean, I started my preparation late in when I was in standard 12th, and then after standard 12th, I gave these exams, and tried to manage my board exams along with these entrance exams. And I think on the outset, I'd definitely make this clear that it's easily possible to manage both of those things together. I'm sorry, I've not been following up on what the status of the board exams is for standard 12 students. But even if we are in a situation where board exams did not happen until now, I think even in that situation it's manageable. Or for people who are trying to give the CLAT next year, I don't think it's anything to worry about. With proper time management, like I always say, the CLAT at the end of the day is not necessarily a very preparation heavy exam. But I think, as I'll be talking about later in this session, I think it's more about how you manage it with the correct aptitude, and it's more about understanding the nature of the exam and understanding what the exam is about, the philosophy of CLAT. And I think following that, it's extremely easy to crack this exam. And I think for anybody to get into a good national law school, or any national law school for that matter, or any college that has any of these law entrance exams, I think, I hope, I'll be talking about the CLAT, I'll be talking about the ALET, I'll be talking about the SLAT. And even though I did not give the MHCET and the LSAT, the Jindal one, I'd still, I mean, I know enough, because the patterns are also quite similar. I know enough to talk about those also, and you can easily apply the same strategies or solutions I give to you to those exams. And I'll be speaking on the CLAT and how it's changed. I'll be speaking on the ALET later, and all the other exams, because I'll speak about the ALET and the other exams, leaving CLAT together, and I'll speak about the CLAT separately because of the changed nature of the exam. And I hope this session is of value to you, to all of you who are watching, and I hope you take some knowledge or advice, and I hope it helps your preparation in some or the other way.
Vyom, coming to the very first point, which has always fascinated me in you as a student, and I have told this to a lot of kids these days. It is that the way you approach the section of mathematics, like
Right.
with respect to, I was talking to Sarthak, and we both know that he was very well doing with when it comes down to maths. But with
Right.
you, it was in January. We were talking about, sir, दो number भी आ जाए तो बहुत है. And then suddenly it was like February, सर 8 number आ रहा है. मार्च थोड़ा उसके क्लोज आते आते सर अब 12 पहुंच गया, लग रहा 16-17 आ जाएगा. So what did you exactly do in these last few months along with this board exam, so that you managed this mathematics section, which is considered as like, I did not attempted that section, so
Yeah.
it considered very much like कि attempt ही नहीं करेंगे, but then you got into like 2 महीने के अंदर you ensured that you were getting this rank. लाइक अगर मैथ तो नहीं अटेम्प्ट आई डोंट बिलीव आज हम ये कन्वर्सेशन भी कर रहे होते.
Right. So I think maths is one section that's remained the same with a few changes here and there. So maths is one section that hasn't changed, maybe just a few questions here and there. And I think maths is one of those sections which at any point of time is one section that's absolutely indispensable to somebody getting a cutting edge rank. I think maths is one of those make and break sections, because let us say we have four other sections, right, in every law entrance exam. I'm pretty sure I can say this with absolute certainty that everybody will be doing all of those four sections quite rigorously. But I think maths is one of those one section which everybody would not pay as much, I'd say, attention to, because there is, even I had it, fear of maths, as a lot of people know, and that fear is not actually the fear of the subject, but the fear of practicing that subject, the fear of actually sitting down and engaging with that subject. And I think the first thing that anybody should do, at least in the latter stages, at least when you have 1 month, a month or two, I think is that everybody, every one of us has passed sixth grade, seventh grade, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. And the most basic analytical ability and mathematical ability is something everybody, I think, has. So following that, I think doing extremely basic chapters such as mensuration, percentages, profit and loss, and clocks, calendars, all of these chapters which follow. I think all of these chapters are so basic that everybody can do it in a day or two at max. Because my brother, he's in the fifth standard in his school, a CBSE school. He has been doing profit loss, CP, SP, and all of these concepts. So when somebody from the fifth standard is starting to do all of these concepts, including profit and loss and decimal points and fractions and all of these, I think it is fairly accurate to say that such elementary mathematical concepts are things that every student has to do. Because let us understand that these concepts are concepts that are taught literally in the fifth and the sixth standard. And I think it was, and I'd give this advice to everybody, that it is not too late. I'd confess that it was a mistake for me to start with maths so late, to confront, and I mean, obviously, to confront mathematics so late in my preparation. I think I could have gotten a better rank, for that matter, had I secured a full mark, or 1 mark short of the full score in the mathematics section, which a lot of my friends and a lot of people who I know did, and who actually got extremely sublime ranks because of it, or extremely high scores in mocks and in the real life exam also. I think it's equally about, when you approach maths, it's equally about understanding that maths is not some different beast altogether. It's not some demon that's coming to haunt you. It's one thing that you have to do just for this exam. It's something that's extremely elementary. It's as elementary as, say, a reading comprehension. It's as elementary, as, say, a puzzle or whatever. And elementary in the sense that it only and only takes practice, the amount of times you practice. And I'd say that in such times, and not the contemporary period, but I think in general also, due to so much technology and so much content online, I think there are some great, I'd really suggest a personal strategy. There are some great YouTube channels which give you a lot of shortcuts, a lot of tips and tricks for cracking the maths and the logical section. So, in the worst case scenario where you do not have a contact with a mentor or somebody else, I think just watching these YouTube videos for the sake of watching them, and then solving some questions, sitting down with the book and solving maths for a couple of hours every day, 3 hours every day, with breaks obviously, I think is an extremely efficient strategy, because when you analyze every paper, every NLS paper, NALSAR paper, CLAT, ALET, whatever paper, what you will see is that there are at least five or more than say five, six, seven, eight, if it's CLAT 10 plus questions that are extremely elementary, which everybody could solve by sitting with that topic for just a day, or just an hour, or just an hour and a half. And I think if your conversion ratio of a topic to marks is literally that of 1 hour, all it takes is 1 hour for you to get a mark or two. I think that's an extremely high ratio, which most types of questions wouldn't give to you in any section, in any other section. And I think there lies the key, in essence, sitting down with maths, not getting fearful of maths, and understanding that if you do not have the ability, if you think you do not have the ability or the time to engage with the higher level of questions, at least do the most basic and not let those most basic questions get away. Yeah.
Vyom, can you let us know that how being well versed with the language of English, like whenever we
Yeah.
used to have this conversation, you used to say English ठीक है, English हो जाएगी. So
Yeah.
what made this belief come to you that English हो जाएगी? मतलब
Uh,
what was your actually strategy with respect to English rather?
So I think English does not, and I think it's a truism that any language for that matter does not simply come out of a certain formula, but any language comes out of a lot of practice. Because at the end of the day, a lot of things we do, even in terms of building an aptitude for an exam or anything else, a lot of the things we do, we're at the end of the day creatures of habit. And I think language also comes as a great matter of habit. I've been extremely lucky, I'd say, that I've had an environment where I have been exposed to books and reading English, and reading newspapers, and a lot of enforcement from my parents to read both English and Hindi and be well versed in both languages. So I think in that sense, I've been extremely lucky that I have a certain command. Nevertheless, I'd also stress this fact that I'm not from an urban town or a metro city for that matter. I'm from a relatively relatively non-metro city, that is Varanasi. So there are several constraints, because obviously it's a fact of life that not everybody, in say non-metro cities, or from backgrounds that are not privileged for that matter, not everybody has access or exposure to these things. So I'd say that nevertheless, that does not mean that you cannot at any point build these skills. And I think it comes from a lot of reading in general, and not just reading, and not just reading, I'd say reading eclectically, that is to say reading from a lot of sources. So for example, one should not read just politics or just sports or just entertainment, but a mix of all three, and add technology, add environment, add different things of different areas. And I think that is the best way for anyone. And strictly speaking, when we talk in context of CLAT, I think speaking and writing any language, or English for that matter, is not a priority, but reading is. And logically, reading is something that one will do. And as I have learned in my time, reading is extremely essential to law school or getting any graduate degree in general, especially in the humanities, the social sciences, and the law. So I'd say in a span of 2 months, I think reading different sources every day and intensively, I'd say, is extremely essential to not just cracking an exam. I think cracking an exam for that matter is a very myopic view for learning a language such as English or any other language. I'd say in general also, and for law school. Having said that, I'd say that there are a lot of sources that one can refer to for reading various kinds of stuff. I think the Hindu's editorial, not all of them, but the Hindu's main featured editorial, that is the longest one, I think is an essential read for anybody. Um, a lot of interesting articles come on Sunday in the Hindu magazine, and I think one should definitely read those. TheGuardian.com is an excellent source for a lot of diverse range of readings in terms of everything. I'd say there's a website that's extremely precise and brilliant in terms of the content it gives. It's called aeon.co, aeon.co, and I think everybody should read at least one article of Eon every day. I think Eon has the perfect non-fictional approach to articles, which are which all of them which are extremely critical in nature, which are extremely analytical in nature, and I think those are perfect readings for somebody who does not only want to read better English, but for your reading comprehensions and things like and other things also. I think these are some of the broader sources that I'd recommend: Guardian, Eon, The Hindu, Project Syndicate.org is a brilliant website for economics and politics and society and culture in general. And I'd say all of these websites, if you read one article off of each website every day and read at least 5 to 6 articles of different subjects every day in a span of 2 months, I think you will be extremely proficient with reading English, and not just reading English, but reading and comprehending English and critically thinking about a lot of things in general, which is one of, I think, one of the key things which CLAT tests, that is your aptitude. And aptitude literally means being suited to a certain skill or a certain job or a certain temperament. That's literally the definition of what aptitude is. And I think the CLAT or the ALET or any exam for that matter tests exactly that. Whether you're built for this exam or not, in the context of that exam, whether you have the requisite skills to pass that exam. And I think reading intensively these articles every day is an excellent way to build that aptitude.
Over to you, Shweta.
Yeah, so Vyom, before Harsh asked about the English and the strategy, you were trying to complete a thought. If you could go back to that. We were discussing something like you had the flow. You want to talk more about it,
Right.
or yeah?
Right. So I'd say understanding this exam is the key to cracking this exam. That is the first general statement that I'd like to put out. So, what is this exam? This exam is essentially about your aptitude for certain reading skills, for certain analytical skills, and certain skills for comprehension. Now, this whole exam, or these sets of exams, exam meaning all exams relating to the undergraduate law degree in general, I think all of these exams test two fundamental skills, that is comprehension and reasoning. So what is comprehension? Comprehension is literally um, the ability to understand. And what is reasoning? The ability to reason, the ability to understand and put things in a logical manner and use that logic to justify certain things. So these are the two things that are essential to cracking this exam: the ability to understand and the ability to reason. Now, the whole pattern of this exam is centered around these two concepts and how you develop these two concepts. And I think given how the nature of this exam has completely changed in the year 2020, I'd say till 2019, because of so many years of continuity, the exam had a certain, and each year had a great deal of similarity in terms of the questions that are being asked, and also in terms of the approach that one has, and say the sets of questions that keep recurring every year. So as the exam kept recurring every year, the questions also kept recurring every year. It was the same set, or the same concept that was being asked each time. This time I think it's a little different. This time I think it's actually focused a little more on your aptitude in general, and both of those reading and comprehension skills. And I'd say not just reading comprehension, but also critical thinking. And critical thinking is essentially the ability to dissect things and challenge things in say the opposite manner of what the writer is conveying to you. So for example, I think looking at every statement in terms of what that statement actually implies is critical thinking. So I'd say a very brief example. So a statement or a paragraph or any argument in general has some parts, that is the premise, the assumption, and the conclusion. The premise essentially is a general statement. For example, a premise could be I'm wearing a red shirt or a red t-shirt. A premise could be my hair is black. An assumption is the underlying thought process that goes behind, without which that statement wouldn't be true. So, for example, if I have this phone, and if I tell you that I'm about to call you, my assumption is that this phone is a working phone, because the only way I'll be able to call you is when my phone functions in a normal manner. That's an assumption, an underlying statement that has to be necessarily true for my statement to be correct. And then on the basis of one or multiple assumptions and one or say multiple premises, that is multiple statements, I derive a conclusion. Now essentially what critical reasoning or thinking critically involves is essentially this: you either challenge one of the premises. You say, if my premise is my shirt is red, if you want to challenge this premise, you have to say my shirt is not red. You will say no, this is maroon, right? And or for example, in the phone example, you will have to challenge the fact that if I show you this phone and if I say I'm about to call you, the assumption obviously underlying assumption obviously is that this phone is functioning. Now to challenge my argument critically, or to challenge my premise that I'm about to call you, you can either challenge my premise, that is I'm about to call you, or you can either challenge my assumption that my phone is functioning. You can say that your assumption is flawed because you haven't shown me that your phone is functioning, you've only showed me the back cover. So I don't know whether the phone works or not, so therefore your premise is false. Yeah. So I think it is this thinking which one has to learn how to process really fast, is how you will get through the critical parts of this exam. And in general, I think being curious about things goes a long way to crack this exam. Curiosity works in maths, curiosity works in general knowledge, curiosity works in English or in reasoning or any facet of this exam in general. So I'd say if there are certain essential skills that you can develop in or try to develop in a matter of 2 months, I'd say curiosity is one of them. Learn to question everything, learn to ask why, how, and not just a what. A lot of people end GK at what is the news that's going on, what happened in the USA, what happened in India, what's the CAA. So when you stop at what, you do not only cut off the curiosity aspect of things, you also cut off the underlying context and the historical background of a certain, for example, current affairs. Now in CLAT, as I understand it, CLAT is now not or ALET or whatever is not extremely fond of asking extremely static questions. For example, what happened in medieval India, or what happened in this era or that era. CLAT is more fond of asking static that's related to current affairs in some manner. For example, if the RBI is in news, it might ask something related to the RBI. Now your job is not to learn about the whole history of the banking system in India, which might have been a part of the static portion of general knowledge. your job is to find about basic information about the RBI, which, as a rule of thumb, you can say any rational citizen with a curiosity, a basic level of curiosity would have. So a person would not know completely, or would not memorize the monetary policy of India as a whole, but a person would definitely know when the RBI was founded, by what act, by what commission, who's the current governor of the RBI, who's the first governor of the RBI, and some general questions like this. Now, this is completely intuitive, and this completely depends on the extent that you're willing to go to, and the amount of time and the capacity you have at that specific period or point of time. Having said that, I'd say, do not go too deep into general knowledge. That could be a slippery slope. You could just learn and learn and learn and learn and never stop. But I'd say, as a general rule of thumb, if we're talking about general knowledge, as a general rule of thumb, what you can do is try to know as much as an informed and a curious citizen would know, and that extent completely depends on you. But I'd say extremely general facts which a reasonable person might ask about the RBI, or about any current affairs related to the static history of it. Any rational person or any curious person would ask is something you should know. And a very good example for what to what extent should my curiosity go is the example of, say, children. A child would keep asking you why, what, how, when, etc. So, as a reasonable person, try to limit it, but try to at least fulfill all these questions, including the whys, the hows, and not necessarily the hows, but the whys, the whens, and the whats. These three things are, I think, essential when you write static so I think I'll just briefly tell you the skills required for building a general aptitude. I'd say number one is curiosity. Number two is reading comprehension. Now, when we talk of reading comprehension, the phrase essentially means both reading and comprehension. For example, simply say reading stuff fast does not necessarily mean that you have comprehended it or understood it, and simply understanding does not mean that you have read it at the requisite pace that is required in, for example, a timed exam, which is essential. So I'd say an average person reads about 150 to 200 or 250 words per minute. I'd say if you read a lot in general, and because 2 months is an immense amount of time to build such aptitude, I think if you read, for example, 5 articles a day, or 5 to 6 articles a day, I think you can increase your reading speed to about 300, 350 words per minute easily. And I think that's an achievable target also. There are a lot of applications online, a lot of websites online that you can use to time your reading speed. And I think, given the importance that CLAT has this year on reading and intensive reading, I'd say that it's an exercise that is absolutely indispensable, and you cannot do away without you cannot do away without it. So I'd say a lot of emphasis on reading and comprehension both. I'd also add that a lot of people tend to falter here when they either try to read too much or read too little. I think focus a target for yourself and follow that target daily. I think discipline only helps, and this is something I used to do. For an extremely long period of time, I did not structure what I am about to study. So for in the initial days of my preparation, or the initial months, I'll say, those were the times when I did not study a subject particularly and have a structured approach to it. Now, what that did was scatter my knowledge. So when I'm giving a test in actuality, I got confused a lot. I tend to be confused at a point in time where a lot of things are scattered in general. So I'd say that one has to make a short-term schedule, and because you have 2 months, a medium-term schedule as to the goals that you set for yourself daily. These are the things I'll do today. I'll do 5 passages, 5 puzzles, 5 legal questions, etc. And medium-term goals in the fact that those can be weekly, those can be monthly, those can be bi-weekly, or whatever suits. And say have targets that by this time I shall average about 5 out of 10 marks in maths if I attempt a paper. So realistic goals which you have to set for yourself, so that number one, you can track your progress, and number two, I'd say, so that you have a more structured approach to your study, so that your thoughts do not get cluttered or clattered. And I'd say it also acts as a great deal of motivation. So Simon Sinek has a book called Leaders Eat Last, where he says that when we check off certain items of our to-do lists, it makes us happy in some way. It releases certain chemicals in our body, and because of those chemicals, we feel accomplished. And it is exactly this feeling that gives you some amount of motivation to study more, or feel happy that you have accomplished or achieved something in this short period. And that feeling, and in general also, so for example, when you go shopping, when you make a list and when you buy things and cross things off the list, you do feel a certain kind of happiness, or you feel nice in general. And I think it is that feeling that you must strive. And at no point I'd say that any of your academic activities or preparatory activities should become a burden for you. Always and always remember that this exam is not about the amount of hours you can cram in the subject. This isn't say a very theoretical exam. This isn't say a very intensive exam in that sense. It is intensive in a different sense, but not in the sense that you need to cram 10,000 books or practice some 1 lakh questions to achieve a sort of mastery, or you need to put in 1 lakh hours to solve one question or grasp one concept. It's an elementary exam that requires certain abilities and an aptitude, and it is that aptitude that you need to crave, which say it had become by 2019, a lot of people would have just cracked the exam, and I swear on this, a lot of people would have just cracked the exam had you done the past year papers for the last 20 years. And I'm sure everybody who's a trainer in these exams, I'm sure Harsh sir would definitely agree to it, that a lot of people who might have simply solved the past year questions would have got through at least 70 or 80% of the paper, even if you might have studied nothing before. So I'd say that this change in approaches also marks a change in how you structure your study, how you approach this exam, and how you comprehend the nature of this exam. And I'd say that it's not a formulaic exam now. It's not a one solution, one size fits all, that you do this topic, do this topic, do this topic, solve these many years of question papers, and you will get repeated questions, or the values will get changed, or the principle will have a minor tweak, and you could have your way through. I think now this paper would be a lot less based on those formulas and those theorems, and now would be based more on how you might have prepared in certain personality skills and certain aptitude skills that you might have developed over your period of preparation, which include reading, which include critical reasoning, which include your curiosity, which include more essentially your ability to sit down for 2 hours and just focus on one thing. So a lot of what modern, say I'd say, technology has done is to kill our attention spans. And I'd say a lot of, and this is something that's personally helped. I was off social media for some, and a lot of people would say, oh no, you can manage both. Sure, you can manage both, but as a personal tip, I was off social media for at least 2 months or 3 months before the exam, so I could simply focus on my concentration skills, rebuilding my attention span, and focus and sit down and give a paper with 100% concentration for at least 90 minutes. And I think, um, if you cut your social media time and maybe engage more in real and maybe engage more in, say, some real life activities rather than social media, I think that also goes a long way to crack this exam. So I'd say those are some extremely general comments that I'd make on aptitude and what's required for these exams now.
Great, very nice. Also, if I had to like get into numbers, how many questions per day would you solve? I was, there were other speakers, last few days that came up with their own personal strategy, and they said that really last 20, 21 days especially. And what's your, like, let's say the magic number, what is unachievable, impossible at first, and then you start doing it because no choice.
That if you burn yourself out, it's really harsh. And I really hello. So if anybody tries to burns themselves out, I think it takes a great toll on their mental health and how they just approach life in general. And I'd say that it's not necessary to burn yourselves out. I certainly did not. And it's also a very important lesson you learn while preparing for such exams, that the pressure can get to you, anxieties can get to you, but I'd say definitely everybody really just needs to chill out at the end. And that is where structure and discipline matters. Because when you do not have a structure to your study, when you do not have discipline in terms of how you'll approach the day, or how you'll approach the week or the month, you sometimes study too little based on your mood, you sometimes study too much based on your mood. And when you have a disciplined structure and a pattern to approach your day, you you focus on those 4 hours, those 5 hours, those 6 hours, or any xyz hours, and you give your 100% there, neither less nor more. And I think in the long run that's most beneficial to somebody's mental health, and to somebody's performance and ability, and how they'll approach this exam. And I think that's an extremely general statement. Now, coming to numbers, I'd say that whatever it was consistent throughout. Now, I think in the latter parts of my preparation, I think again structuring my days became extremely important, and I used to plan the night before as to what I'll do tomorrow, and all of those things would involve some or the other element of touching a subject or the other each day. Now, this is notwithstanding the fact that I did not count, say, the articles I read, or say any other thing that's a side benefit, or that's a side activity, what I call an extracurricular. I did not add them in my hours of study, and I think that's extremely essential. Because even though these things should become a part of your lifestyle while you're preparing for this exam, these are certainly not the key elements of this exam. These are obviously the side benefits that fetch you the extra 5 mark or the extra 10 mark that differ you from the others. So I'd say my approach was I read 5 articles or 10 articles every day, and that completely depended on the content that was out there for the specific day. I try to touch each and every section every day, and I'd give at least half an hour to 1 hour to each section, and this was by the end. Now, when you have certain consistency, you also do not feel pressurized at the end. So it's not that you read 10 articles or 50 articles in 7 days and not read anything else in the past periods of your study. So I'd say my strategy was solving, for example, 10 maths questions every day on a specific topic, revising GK for a particular month. I used to do it month wise. So revising GK for a particular month. And one thing that I used to do for GK was that I concentrated my GK as much as I could and made my notes as short as possible. So for example, I had noted down this fact of GK. The next time I used to revise it, I used to make it even brief, and the next time I used to revise it, I used to make it even brief. So it became brief and condensed to such a point that it was in its most concise form, right? So for example, RBI changed the repo rate to certain XYZ percentage. So in the first attempt, it was RBI changed the repo rate to 6%. Then it was RBI January repo rate, RBI repo rate X%. So you condense it to such a point where it's literally a byte, and I used to write it down. So one thing that's extremely effective for something like GK is that you have to regurgitate it, and the best way of regurgitating, that is to say memorizing something, is to essentially just read it and go through it over and over and over again. So, in the last few months of my exam, I used to revise GK every day, and in the last few weeks, I used to go through every month of GK, every note I made again and again and again, and I used to do the whole 12-month GK in one day, and I did it for a week or two, and I think I got fantastic results. So if you need to be good in GK, the only thing you need to do is to just look at the damn paper as much as possible. Just keep revising, keep revising, keep revising. Revision is key to GK, and I think that's a universal principle. A lot of it is subjective. Different people have different capacities for memorization, but I'd say whatever your capacity is, I definitely say just keep going through GK as much as you can, keep condensing it, and after one point of time, it will be absolutely natural to you. Another thing that I highly, highly, highly recommend is that if you have somebody who's willing to talk to you about general knowledge, or who can take out some amount of time off their days, you can sit down and talk about current affairs with somebody you know, be it a friend, be it your family, be it anybody you want. What that does is, number one, that generally refreshes you because you have some amount of social interaction. And when I talk about speaking about GK, I do not mean engaging in political debates about this party or that party or whatever else, or
Yeah.
this is correct, that is correct. Just simple analytical facts, present them as you're a news reporter. And I mean, not dramatizing it or something, but just present those facts. For example, if for example 5th June is World Environment Day, it's coming soon. So presently, if we have the World Environment Day, you can simply go ahead and talk to somebody about the World Environment Day, and you can just simply inform them that, hey, I mean, 5th June is World Environment Day, and you can tell them ki this year has this theme and all of that stuff. I'd say a great exercise for things like sports news is something that I did, and as a side hobby, it sparked interest in some sports for me. That is to say, that I used to watch sports events. That is to say, finals or semi-finals and all of these extremely important events, and that made me memorize certain facts of current affairs better. For example, if there's a tennis finals, if there's a US Open, or if there's an Australian Open, I just used to sit down take off some time of my study, and I honestly did not study for 10 or 12 or 100 hours a day. I kept it at a minimum, but I kept it consistent. So it was 6 to 7 or 5 hours or 4 hours, but it was consistent throughout. So what I used to do, coming back to what I was saying, was that I simply sat down and watched a Wimbledon. I watched maybe the UEFA World Cup. I watched the women's cricket finals, and this generally just refreshed my mind, and this also made me memorize the current affairs better. This is something you could also do with, for example, important award shows like the Oscars. You can just sit down. Now the timing's a problem because the Oscars in the USA, it streams at 6 a.m., 5 a.m., but you can still do that. You can simply watch the Oscars and stream it fully, and that way you just get your deal of entertainment, and not being completely invested in studies and burning yourself out. You get your fair share of entertainment, and you also learn some facts in general. So I'd say those are two things.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
the point what you said about the consistency. What you decide to do each day, just stick to that as a discipline, and no, don't do that like with 10 articles today and if not five, just for the heck of numbers. Don't do that. It's like every evening you ask yourself, have I perfectly utilized my day? Am I proud of
Yeah.
it? In
Yeah,
every subject.
exactly.
How many
Exactly.
how many mock
Yeah.
tests, let's say last 2 months, if you have, as your focus now that people are preparing now at this point, how many mock tests would you, because it's more like practice, analyze, repeat. So how many do you suggest?
So I'd say that my time period was also very, very large. I'd say I had say at least 300 days for my preparation. I utilized my time, and I'll be honest, I gave around 80 to 90 mocks at least. If I can count on my hand, I'd say it was at least 80 to 90 mocks, and I'd contend that it was even more. So I had a lot of time. I had the benefit of a lot of time. But at this point, if you have 2 months, I'd say that you focus on giving one mock each day, and that mock, and for example, right now, I think one of the best strategies would be just to solve, for example, for ALET at least, will be just to solve every past year paper each day at this point of time, that is to say right now or whenever you are about to start. So there are about 10 or 12 or whatever number of papers ALET has, or SLAT for that matter has. You do one paper every day right now, and when the exam is about to come, you do those papers again. So what this does is set, number one, a comparative, a standard for how much you have improved. Number two, makes you more familiar with the questions. So every time you approach the test, you are extremely confident. Because this and all of these things which usually get ignored are extremely important, are because you might be the best prepared person on the table on the day of the exam. But if, for example, you do not have the requisite confidence, you will just succumb to pressure. You will see your heart is racing, you will be palpitating, you will be sweating all over. But if you're simply cool because you're confidence, I'm sorry, because you're confident, and confidence at the end of the day comes with the amount of knowledge you have, and the level of preparation you have. So if you're familiarized yourself with the process, if you're able to sit down for 2 hours focusing on nothing else but the paper, and if you do it twice for that matter, I think there is nothing that would actually stop you from cracking this exam, which I think literally everybody has the capability of cracking. I'd say mocks, when it comes to mocks, it's extremely important to not get stuck in say certain questions. For example, I'd say I'd completely advise skipping the GK section and not viewing the GK section from the point of view of, obviously, because 2019's current affairs wouldn't be asked in 2020, or 2018 for that matter. And I'd say that you focus on the more objective parts which do not change, that is to say maths, logical reasoning, English, all of and legal reasoning, all of these sections. And what you do is, mock analysis is absolutely simple. You take your paper, after you solved it, you take a break, you solve a 2 hour paper, you take a 1 or 2 hour break, you do whatever you want in that period and just chill out. Then you come back, you sit down with focus in concentration, and what you do is you simply look at the questions you got wrong. Now when you see that you have a certain type of question that's wrong, for example, in the critical reasoning section, if what you often solve incorrectly is, for example, CR questions that deal with assumptions. So what I'd actually suggest is, you take the paper, you sit down with it after taking a good break, and then you look at the paper, you see your errors, and you be absolutely harsh in criticizing yourself, because you are the only person who's going to be completely honest with you. Nobody else would be. And if you lie to yourself here, when you're only alone with yourself and you're with the paper, if you lie right now, it might be a short term reassurance, but it will have a huge cost in the actual paper. So you be absolutely critical of yourself. You see the kinds of questions that you are or the sections that you solve incorrectly, the kinds of questions you solve incorrectly, you take the topic in general and you revise and solve other types of questions in that topic. For example, if you get maths and logic incorrect very frequently, what you can do is that if there is a specific topic, you can take some book or you can take some side lesson, and just go through it or solve very specific kinds of questions. But for example, if what you solve incorrectly is the whole section in general and you get extremely low marks, what you can do is you can take another set of relevant papers and solve them. So for example, what I used to do, at least that's relevant for ALET and the other exams except CLAT. What I used to do was that I did not solve a lot of in my starting days. I did not used to solve a lot of logical reasoning, that is to say, analytical reasoning and math sections correctly. What I used to do was I used to take the SSC banking papers, which were extremely also elementary in nature, I'd say, after you have a fair share of practice. So I used to take those papers and I used to solve them in a given frame of time, and then I used to revisit those questions. I used to analyze those papers also. So for example, a great tip, I'd say a personal tip, would be to solve SSC banking papers for maths and logical reasoning. They go a long way. For critical reasoning, I'd say there are online resources for the GMAT and the CAT. Now the GMAT and the CAT have a good, I'd say, have a good standard of questions, and I'd not say get into those questions, say, or try to solve them, and if you don't solve them you get disheartened. No, what I'd say is you get the concept behind those questions, so try to attempt those questions and try to see the reasoning behind those questions. Now what that will do is that will not give you a confidence boost or give you, say, a lack of confidence because you aren't or are able to solve those questions. What that will do is, if there are proper explanations for those answers for GMAT questions and CAT questions, what that will do is that will essentially prepare you for for understanding the basic reasoning and the concept that goes behind critical reasoning questions. And I'd say that is what analysis is absolutely about. Analysis is about concept. And analysis, I'd say, is not relevant to the general knowledge section, because the general knowledge section is completely arbitrary, completely up to what questions the examiner will ask out of a pool of 1 lakh bits of information. And that is why I'd highly say do not analyze your general knowledge section too much, but analyze the other four very thoroughly, grasp the concepts of the other four very thoroughly, and see where you're lacking. And if you follow this approach, I think, and you revise your GK regularly, I think there is nothing that's stopping you from rectifying your errors at any point. Yeah.
Right. So if we come back to the strategy of the last 2 months, what do you think is those 5% who really make it to the best colleges, the dream colleges of the country? What do you think they could be doing correctly, and what is the difference?
So I'd say that the best prepared, at least maybe the top 200, the top 500, any X number around that range, I think most of them have around similar levels of preparation. And I'd say some of it is just pure luck, right? And one must not disregard those factors. But because I think personally one cannot take control of luck, I'd say the best strategy would be to be as thorough in your preparation as possible, and be realistic in your preparation. So for example, if there is, if you have 7 days to prepare, it's the final 7 days and you're just going through past year papers, if there is one question that's different from, say, the general trend of all papers, I do not think it's a wise strategy at the end to spend 10 hours on that concept or that question. So I'd say a very important aspect of what makes it to the top is intelligently understanding what the paper is about and intelligently knowing what is relevant and what is irrelevant. A lot of, for example, if I go section wise, a lot of what's asked in say general knowledge or what's given in compendiums is extremely irrelevant. So, for example, if there's something happening in, say, France, and it's related to France's relation with some African country or some Middle Eastern country, that's absolutely not relevant to CLAT, except when it's absolutely groundbreaking, as in France attacking that country or France doing something magnanimous with that country. Except that, I don't think it's relevant. So filtering information, what goes on to your head, I think the filtering of that information is what actually makes the difference. And this filter can only be acquired when you have a thorough grasp of the nature of the paper and when you have analyzed past year papers of that exam. So I think when it comes to ALIT, analyzing the past year papers is very easy. You just take the papers, you solve them once, and you just go through all of them, and you see similarities. You see what's the tendency of this paper to asks a certain type of questions. And if so, for example, I think it's also equally relevant that in a paper that's extremely lengthy, what sometimes makes the difference is what questions somebody chooses to leave. Because let us remember, at the end of the day, each question has just 1 mark. So it's like a vote. Literally, every question has one and equal value. So you might be spending time on an extremely difficult question for that 1 mark. But if there's a GK question of a set of five that can give you 5 marks instantaneously, I think it's much easier and much preferable and much rational to just do the GK question instead of fighting a battle with that one question that's simply unsolvable. So I think this intelligence is something that's only acquired out of analysis and practice, and that comes out of being honest with yourself. If you are that, I think there's nothing stopping you. I'd also say uh, that sometimes intelligent guessing, when it comes to things like GK, obviously works. So you can use things like the elimination method, or you can reduce the probability to a certain extent. For example, if there's one question, which, for example, I know that two options are definitely not correct. So I think as a rational person, I have a 50% probability compared to if I did not know it at all. I had a 25% probability of getting one question right. But if I eliminate two options in the GK question, I have a 50% probability of getting at least one question right, one option right. I have a 50% probability. So I think it completely depends on the intelligence of that one person at that point, of whether you have the confidence enough and whether you can afford to take that risk. And if that risk pays off, it might just be a difference of 100 ranks. So I think these are things that are acquired only out of a certain amount of practice. And the more you do it in, say, mocks, the more you understand the paper, the more you be familiar with it and different concepts of the paper, I think the better it will be.
Yeah.
I'd also say, yeah, sorry.
No problem. Please carry on.
So, as a final tip, I'd also say that it's also extremely important to just be extremely fast when you're reading the paper. So, I think that can only come when you have a great level of concentration for 90 minutes. So, try sitting down and giving a lot of mocks and reading intensively a lot, and just sitting down at one place and concentrating on one thing, and try to expand your confidence, your concentration and your focus and your attention. Because the moment you do that, I think you automatically get an edge, because most people simply cannot comprehend the paper while they're reading it, because they do not have the attention span or the focus or the concentration. If you do that, I think these three things give you a cutting edge over, I think, most 90% people.
Great, great. Akshay wants to know which year did you take your ALIT?
I gave it last year in 2019.
I answered that, but I said I'll still confirm. Great, all great advice, Vyom. I think people who logged in very happy and they're still around after an hour. If you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat box. We're waiting for your questions and we could maybe take them up. Also, if you have any other request in terms of what kind of webinars or topics you would want us to cover, please feel free to put that in the chat box. And any feedback for Vyom, for us, for Law Seco, please feel free to put it also on the chat box. I'm very happy, Vyom, the way you kind of took us through. It's more like you had already, you were aware what kind of doubts, queries, questions people at this time go through, and you kind of address them one by one, so it was a great deal of, yeah, it was great help, and everybody, I think, would be very happy, and a lot of value added today. Anything else? You said, okay, you already said your last advice or the final bit would be this. Fantastic. So please carry on with these 2 months. A lot of mock tests, a lot of reading practice, increase your reading skills in it. And because this is, like you correctly pointed out, the format is such that a lot of reading comprehension would be required. There is one more question I have received. Seeing the number of times the exam has been postponed, which months of GK should we focus on?
Uh, I think it's a safe bet to say that if you've been preparing for a very long time, or say a moderate amount of time, you can quit. You can quit reading GK for at least 2 weeks or 3 weeks prior to when the exam is. If the exam is on the first of say August, you can just stop with the GK by say the first week of July. I think because the examiners understand, and because it's been delayed so much, I don't think, at least I don't expect the general knowledge section to be as intensive or as difficult as they might probably would have made it to be. And I'd say it's a safe bet to say that you can stop 3 weeks or 2 weeks prior. And if you haven't been preparing for a very long time, I'd say stop 1 month before and focus on the other sections.
Don't you think the paper would already be set because it was supposed to happen in May, and they would generally finish setting up the paper by, let's say, March, April? Huh? I'm just
Um, I think I think I think that's
yeah,
I,
it's
I
sitting somewhere
rational.
waiting for the lockdown to be lifted and just start. Yeah.
I really think that's a rational guess, but I'd really say that with CLAT you cannot predict anything. It has been a very unpredictable exam. The CLAT, the ALET, all of these exams, and I think to be on the safer side, I just keep, if not intensively, but I'd keep brushing up the newspaper, just reading some important bits of current affairs, going through compendiums if I have access to any coachings. It's a safe bet, and I think 1 month prior, it's a good amount of time also to to stop there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Akshay wants to know what mistakes did Mr. Tiwari make to get 248 in CLAT, and while he did better in
Yeah.
the second one. Yeah. So what
Yeah,
was?
so I think I have two reasons. I think that, yeah, so I have a huge discrepancy with respect to my CLAT marks and my ALET marks, and I'd say it's primarily because, and I'd say it's an extremely important advice. I'd say after I gave the NLU Delhi exam, it happened 2 weeks or a month before CLAT. So after I gave the NLU Delhi exam, I just simply stopped preparing.
Wow,
So because
really
I
expected
mean, it
answer.
was it was not because I was confident on cracking ALET. It was only because I just did not wish to study further. I thought I actually became too confident. I just stopped preparing. I just stopped brushing up, and I think that is why I think it was a mistake on hindsight. But because NLU Delhi was my primary target anyway, because of its closeness to where I live, Varanasi, I think that is why I stopped preparing. But I think that's something nobody should do,
Yeah.
because obviously on hindsight, if I look at it, I'd say a good CLAT rank wouldn't have looked bad beside my face or something like that.
Yeah, 248 is also decent film. Also, you mentioned luck also has a role to play. What if it didn't, I mean,
Um,
if it didn't happen for the, yeah. And
So I don't generally like to say that, but I'd say definitely there was an element of I'd say simple chance that the paper was too easy, and therefore a lot of people who might not have put in so many hours, or were just simply very smart to solve that paper. I think because it was so elementary, if people were really smart and were able to grasp it, I think the competition automatically, the bar was set extremely high. And maybe it was because of my fault or the paper's fault, but yeah, so there was this huge discrepancy, but I'd not attribute it to luck. I'd not want to. I think it sounds like an excuse, and to one extent, I really believe that if one has to crack a paper, I think with the adequate amount of effort and smart work, I think the people, मतलब जिसको करना होता है यार वो कर लेते हैं, simple बात है.
Sagarika has a very good question, which I also, a lot of people ask in all our webinars. Do you think external coaching is the key, or home learning can still be fine? Coaching is
I no. So I don't think there is not one coaching on the entire planet, I'd say, that can teach you things like common sense, that can teach you things like critical reasoning, that can teach you things like basic aptitude and analysis. I do not think these are skills that coaching centers can feed you with a silver spoon.
you're
I
like
think
bringing in money, and this is what you say on a, yeah. Sorry.
uh, no, but in general also, I'll finish what I have to say.
Sorry, my bad.
So, coaching centers give you a lot of facilities to deal with. You have to understand the critical difference. Where coaching centers actually make a difference is giving you the extra material, the extra tip to solve a question not in 1 minute but in 30 seconds. That is where a coaching center comes and plays a part in. But a coaching center cannot in any universe teach you how to think, because it's an essential activity that's related to your personal experience and your personal ability and your personal effort. Nothing can teach you common sense and the ability to think. But I think the guidance that coaching centers give to you, the mocks, coaching centers are essentially facilitators. And if you use those facilitators to your benefit, I think you can be the top 1%. And if you use those facility, so I'd say never, coaching centers do give you the cutting edge, and I'd say most people would agree. But I'd say do not think that the coaching center is the effort, is the hard work. So for example, when you go to the gym and try to build muscle, the heavy lifting is something that you have to do yourself. The coaching center is simply the protein powder, it's a supplement. Right. The coaching center is a supplement. It's not the main thing itself. So what you need to do is you need to lift the heavy weights yourself and then get the protein powder to build that extra muscle. Yeah. So that's, I think, the perfect analogy, I think.
Yeah, perfect. Bang on. Sagarika, I think that answers your questions. I think the word here, keyword is it's a facilitator. It really helps you structure your study and how to go about it with mock tests and a lot of peers. I think that also the atmosphere, a lot of things are, a lot of factors there. But to answer her question, she had to ask you, is home learning sufficient? Can I, learn at home and not join the coaching center at all?
Um, do your readings, keep revising current affairs, practice critical reasoning, practice maths every day, do all of these things every day, and I think there is no coaching center that you would require if you do it regularly and with a certain amount of discipline. So for example, what coaching centers can also do is, for example, if you go to the coaching and sit for a couple of hours there, you're literally forced to in a structured manner study. It does the same thing but with more efficiency. If you can do all of it yourself, which is a bit of a hard thing to do, but if you can do it with proper discipline, I think it's easy to learn at home, to learn anywhere at all, without being dependent on any coaching. But I'd say if there are mocks that are available, I'd say definitely buy some online courses which give you mocks, which might give you compendiums, and just go through them and keep going through them. And I think mocks and compendiums can never ever hurt. And I am a huge supporter of buying mocks, of solving mocks, and buying compendiums. And if you can do that, if you have the resources to do that, you absolutely should.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Vyom, for answering that, because she had put it in caps, capital letters, and I thought we had to approach it, from that perspective as well. Great. There's somebody who wanted to know about NLU Delhi, but I think we are really over time. It's 1 hour 14 minutes already. But would you like to quickly tell him how NLU Delhi is?
Yeah.
First,
So
Bangalore and other places. Yeah.
I definitely not compare. I'm in no position to, and I don't think comparison is the right way to go anyway. If it's Bangalore or Jodhpur or Lucknow or whatever it is, all of those are law schools with equally talented people with great opportunities. And I'm definitely not being diplomatic here because I have friends across law schools and I know how smart all of them are. So, be it any law school, be it Jindal or Symbiosis or whatever, because the skill sets that are required for a law student are essentially similar across the board. Um, but coming to NLU Delhi, I'd say that it's a great college, obviously. It has built quite a name for itself. Um, I'd say that, but you should also never conflate it to be a dreamland or a golden ticket as if it's your way to everything. I'd absolutely argue that places like NLU Delhi or any other top law school are law schools are great stepping steps, but they're not the end of the journey. They're literally the start of the journey. A lot of people come to these colleges and become complacent and do not move ahead. I think I think at least for me in the starting semesters, I believe it is absolutely okay. I spoke to seniors. All of us, we go through the same ordeals. We go through the same issues. We go through the same situations, etc. But I'd say that at the end of the day, it's a fantastic place. You meet great people. You have a great library. You have a great campus. Delhi, obviously, you have great food. You have great culture. You have great places to go to. Um, a law school, definitely NLU Delhi with 80 people, it's a very closed environment. So everyone almost knows of or knows everybody. So that can be a good thing and a bad thing in itself. And I think overall, I'd say never judge a law school on its name, because I think like coaching centers, law schools are also facilitators. So it's not like this law school is like Hogwarts and other law schools are, say, just average or bad or whatever. I think it's equally good across the board. And if you come here, it's a great place to be in. Obviously, there is a lot of help you're going to get. There are a lot of resources, opportunities, internships, competitions, extracurriculars, academics, everything that you will have great access to and great stepping stones for your career. So I really say that if you come here, some great opportunities are here for you to grow and develop yourself. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you for taking that question. I think we are done with all the questions and also with the time for today. But we'll keep coming with all the webinars. Thank you, Losipu. Thank you, Mr. Tiwari. So great help, great insights. And we'll see you soon with another topic maybe. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, everyone.